Okay. Thank you. It is it's a really great honor to be a moderator of this panel. I'm Jungmin Song. I'm a research associate at the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry. So I entered the field of puppetry as an assistant maker for Lindy Wright, who has a puppet theater in London called Little Angel Theater. So before I arrived at the Ballard, for me, like puppets are puppets only when it is performing. When it's not moving, it's not performing, it's a doll. That's what I thought. Then somehow I landed here, and then I learned from John and also Emily about how to make a puppet alive in exhibitions, even when they are not moving. So I will introduce our first panel. First presenter, Kamil Kopania, is an assistant professor at Alexander Zelborowicz National Academy of Dramatic Arts in Warsaw. I mean, I think I wish I could do better. And formerly taught at the Institute of Art History, University of Warsaw. His research explores the intersection of art and theater in the Middle Ages, the reception of medieval artworks, the history of European puppet theater, and aspects of contemporary art. He founded and chaired the Podlaski Association of Fine Arts, which helped to develop Collection 2 at the Arsenal Gallery in Białystok, one of Poland's major public collections of contemporary art. From 2014 to 2017, he was a co-investigator in the National Science Center funded project and the Agency of Things, New Perspectives on European Art in 14th, 16th centuries. Kopania is also a member of ENID, European Network on the Instruments of Devotion, coordinated by University of Berlin. By the way, you can find all the bios at the QR code for the bios at the bottom of the program. So you can kind of like all my mispronunciation can be corrected there. Okay, Kamil, you ready? Yes, take away.
Yes, I'm ready. Do you hear me?
Yes.
So, hello everybody. Okay, so I suppose I can start, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so let's find my presentation here. Hoppa. Okay. Everything's fine? Do you see it? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so I suppose I can start. Yeah. So maybe let's start with this photo. So first and foremost, you know, there's no theater museum in Poland dedicated to puppet theaters, dedicated to, you know, all these objects which function in puppetry. And first and foremost, you know, there are no theater museum presenting puppets themselves, you know. There are nearly 30 professional puppet theaters in the country, usually funded by municipal authorities, each with its own building and a team of dozens, sometimes even hundreds of people working on performances of both children and adult audiences. You know, in addition, there are dozens of private puppet theaters and artistic groups in Poland interested in kind of, you know, object theater, the theater of animated matters, and so on, and, you know, all the similar forms. The tradition of puppet stages in the 20th century is rich and spans, you know, many decades. what is also important is some of the most important Polish artists of the second half of the 20th century. I mean, sculptors, painters, graphic designers, and so on, were involved in creating puppet performances in this kind of theater during the communist times. They found freedom of expression and a platform for a good platform for fascinating artistic challenges. Today's, the contemporary puppetry community is aware of this legacy, and over the past several years has made efforts to just showcase the achievements of set designers and creators of puppets and theatrical decorations. The problem, however, lies in the spaces where these puppets are exhibited. What's the main problem? The spaces are usually not suited to exhibition requirements, and simply and simply fail to meet, the basic standards accepted of venues intended to displaying arts. What is really important, I would like to stress it, they fail to meet the basic standards expected of venues intended for displaying arts. And surely we can agree that puppets are artistic objects through works of art. Too often the interiors, walls, and even the exhibition designs are random or improvised. There were many exhibitions the last years, but a large number of them make viewers perceive the puppets as, just entirely lifeless objects. Only puppet corpses whose bodies, let's say, decay in accidental, ill-suited spaces. This is the one of examples from Polish city of Kielce. In the local museum, we've got exhibition showing puppets, and you see all this, windows, you see all these photo cells, radiators, you see the outside walls of the buildings and gardens, so on and so on. It's not a proper place to present puppets, to stress the quality, the way made, and all effects which are coming along with them. Here you've got a kind of a plant, and so on. Here we've got Lublin. We've got a nice, we see various kinds of equipment, just ordinary terracotta tiles on the floor, just random furniture, just this puppets sitting on the sofa, for example, on the left. For me, it's just a kind of a terrible visual effect. Here you've got a kind of a gallows for puppets, we may say, a gallows for a puppet, or just something like this. A lot of examples can be presented here, but what I would like to present to all of you. Taking advantage of today's conference, and above all the ceremony honoring John Bell, I would like to present two examples to demonstrate how puppets can be exhibited in a way that engages the audience, highlighting the potential of puppet theater, its power, its impact on society, and its deep roots in historical, political, and of course, artistic context. I will refer to two cases, the permanent puppet gallery operating at the Białystok Puppet Theater, so Białostocki Teatr Lalek, and an exhibition devoted to Polish puppet theater in the 20th century, organized in 2019 at the Zachęta National Gallery of Art in Warsaw. And honestly, I should know that, that I was personally involved in the latter as an academic contributor. Academic consultant, sorry. The first example is an exhibition that, immerses the viewer. This is the Białystok Puppet Theater, the building of the Białystok Puppet Theater, and inside of it, in the cellars, there are a huge gallery of puppets, which were used during the years, mainly from the 60s of the 20th century. This is the example of an exhibition that immerses the viewer in total, phenographically convinced space, one designed to evoke emotions and inspire the viewer to create their own individual narratives, stories, and interpretations. Puppets designed by the most important Polish set designers who collaborated with the Białystok Puppet Theater are presented there in large numbers to create a kind of a particular atmosphere, further enhanced by the lighting design. So there are no just pure corpses, no lifeless images, no, let's say, dead bodies, dead puppet bodies, but something more. I hope it works like that. I'm convinced it works like that. You can create your own works as a viewer, or your own worlds as a viewer, seeing all this puppets, all these elements of scenography which was used during various shows presented in Białystok puppet theater. This is a kind of a scenography. You've got an exhibition, but this is a kind of a scenography, scenographical exhibition. The second example, the exhibition in this building, I mean the Zachęta National Gallery of Art, was intended to emphasize the puppets, that puppets are often fully fledged works of art. There was an exhibition in Zachęta Gallery, I mean, Puppets, Theater, Film, Politics, which I had a pleasure to co-organize. Here are some posters. Here is the catalog. You can download it for free. And first and foremost, there is a book which inspired us a lot during our work. I mean, we wanted to show puppetry and puppets in a very wide context. This book was very important for us in this context. As I said, the Zachęta exhibition was intended to emphasize that puppets are often fully fledged works of art, deserving the same status as, for example, sculptures created by major artists exhibited in the museum or galleries, or modern art or contemporary art. What matters here is form, style, and the puppet's placement within specific artistic movements of and tendencies. Doing this, making these exhibitions, preparing these exhibitions, we thought, and we still think, that puppets deserve to be exhibited with care and creativity. They should not be hung on walls and placed in display cases, for example. Doing so destroys the theatrical essence and their full expressive potential. Take care in how you present puppets. Thank you very much. There are some more images, but I think that the idea of what I want to say to you is quite clear.
Thank you, Kamil, for wow.
Thank you so much.
It's it's really kind of rich culture of Polish puppetry, or like in general, like Eastern European puppetry. We also see also through online. Thank you very much. So I will introduce our next presenter. I believe it's Mascha. Mascha Erbeldin is joining us from Munich, I believe, in Germany. Mascha has worked in puppet theater and fairground attractions collection at the Munich City Museum since 2008 and became its director in 2021. She has curated numerous exhibitions, including the recent Ein Poppenheim, old role-playing games and new images of humanity. Since 2007, she has served as artistic and organizational director of the International Puppet Theater Festival Wunder. And since 2009, of the Festival for Children Under 5, which she co-founded. Erbelding is a longtime editorial team member of Double, a magazine dedicated to puppet theater, and regularly publishes on puppetry topics. She contributed to the Handbook of Artistic Puppetry 1900 to 1945, edited by Manfred Wagner. I was very lucky to visit the Munich City Museum in 2023 with the research funding from School of Fine Art of UConn. And then I experienced the most generosity and then like support from the staff by Mascha, and then Mascha and her staff in the museum. I believe it is under construction now, right? Everyone is waiting for its reopening. So we might hear some of it of that story today. Okay, Mascha.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure being in this conference today, and I'm very happy to see you, Min, today. So I'm trying to share my screen.
Go ahead.
Doesn't work yet.
Oh. No.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're sharing it yet, Mascha. Can you try again with the button at the bottom?
Yeah. I'm. My browser is saying I'm not allowed to do that.
Oh. Oh.
Try again. Oh no.
Does she need to get comments? Oh, she doesn't ask.
Yeah, I didn't try it in advance. That's how can I trick it now? I don't know. Perhaps I can quickly send it perhaps that Bradford can
Okay.
be
Let's
first, and I try to send it to Min, perhaps.
send it to Emily.
I send it to Emily, and perhaps in meantime, Bradford can.
Yes.
I'm very sorry.
Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you, Mascha. We'll see. Okay. Where I just need to find the Bradford clock. Who might not need much introduction.
I can introduce myself.
Okay, Bradford Clark is a professor in the Department of Theater and Film at Bowling Green State University, Ohio, where he teaches courses in scenic design, Asian theater, puppetry, and animation history. He has studied puppet construction and performance in Japan, Indonesia, and Korea with me last summer. Clark served as a curator for the expansion of the museum at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, I think we spent a very good time together in the summer in Korea, learning about traditional Korean puppetry. And then one of the highlights of that trip, that also was funded by research funding of this UConn SFA. For me, we one of the highlight of that session was Brad and Dimitri talking on and on and on about who's who in the puppet world in everywhere, Japan, Indonesia, and America. That was it's really so much fun to be with Brad. So Brad will talk about about the Atlanta collection. Is the Center for Puppetry Arts today?
Well, what I'm going to do, I have to say, I kind of wondered if it got a little boring hearing Dimitri and I talk about different kinds of wood and knives.
Yes.
Get two carvers together, and that's what it turns into. Well, I'm actually going to be talking about the process that led to the expansion of the center. Nancy Lohmann-Staub, of course, is the founder of the museum. She has written extensively on the collection itself, and I will be showing some images from it, but Nancy does such a great job of it. I think that she is really the expert, and I wouldn't deign to step, I would not dare to step on her feet that way. But what I realized is that there's a whole process that goes in creating something like this that I think is really fascinating. And because I'm not a museum person, I'm really a stage designer by profession and puppetry by love. It was very new to me. And so a lot of things that would be very obvious for someone working in the field probably were not obvious to me. I want to start off, though, by saying I'm very, very honored to be part of this. John Bell and I met in the mid-'80s, although he doesn't remember it. It was at a Bread and Puppet performance. But he later actually came and saw one of my shows and wrote an evaluation, which led to my tenure. So I owe him a tremendous amount. And I'll be talking about the advisors that we had for this project. And John was one of our advisors, specifically focusing on the American figures in the collection as well as European. So thank you, and I'm really honored to be here. I'll go ahead and start sharing. I have way too many pictures, so I'll be zipping through these as quickly as I can to get this done in a reasonable amount of time. Can everyone see that? I think so. It looks like you can see it, yes?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So just a couple timeline things here. Center for Puppetry Arts opened in 1978. Jim Henson was there to Kermit cut the ribbon. Jim Henson had a long relationship both as a friend of Vincent Anthony, the founder of the museum, and the museum. The Center for Puppetry Arts, and Atlanta itself. Originally, Nancy Lohmann-Staub had lent 150 figures for display, but eventually she donated them. And time passed, and what was started as kind of a temporary exhibit. And I actually remember seeing long before even the museum that existed before I became involved, but the first time I visited, probably in the mid-'80s, was very, very different. But eventually it evolved and became an actual permanent museum. I think the first major exhibit was actually a Jim Henson exhibit that was on tour. And then after that, there were temporary exhibits, touring exhibits, the permanent exhibit. And eventually that initial donation, as it says here, grew to 2,415 figures. That's in 2024. So it's more now because there's an ongoing accession committee, which I've rotated off of, so I'm not quite sure what the current state of it is. But there's always, it's a living collection. There's a sense of where we can build, where we can add, what things might have to be rotated out. Now, the center itself, for those who are not familiar with it, has performance venues, 2 theaters, resident company, puppet construction. There's an education department, a distance learning department, which overlap in many ways, and the Nancy Staub Research Library, the Center for Puppetry Arts. That particular image was on the Atlanta telephone book. I'm very proud of that, when there were things like telephone books. So these are a few of the more interesting pieces from the collection. Nancy's goal was to be able to represent every puppet, certainly every major puppet tradition on the planet, along with significant puppet artists. And it's always kind of moved in that direction. Now, eventually, there was a feeling that it was time to reinstall the Power of Wonder, which was the really wonderful museum that Michael Malkin had actually been the curator for. And so in 2005, a series of meetings took place with money from the National Endowment for Humanities to talk about what would the next step be. And at that point, it wasn't really even clear whether it would be a completely new museum, a reinstallation of what was then Power of Wonder. We used to call it Power of Wonder 2. But it was those initial conversations. And John was involved with this because the money allowed us to essentially, I looked at my bookcase and said, I love this book. I want to get these people on this committee. And everybody within about 24 hours said absolutely. So we had this incredible group of people, some of whom are right here on this conference call, on the Zoom call. But in 2015, literally 10 years ago, in 2 weeks, it'll be the 10th anniversary. The Worlds of Puppetry Museum opens and is actually a whole other building that is an extension of the school, which housed the center for years and years and years. And now the 2 of them are connected, and it's been greatly refurbed, and it's really a completely different place. So some of the things that came up in those early discussions, as I said, we brought in scholars, and the main focus for the scholars was the nature of the collection, to look at the current collection, look at the strengths, give us interpretive information from specialized areas if they had it, but also identify where the weaknesses are, what were the areas that really had big holes in them that needed to be filled. Again, in those early days, we really didn't know where we were going with it. I think today we've been talking about these questions of interpretation, all the different challenges, and so there's nothing new here. Number 1 was simply organization. Power of Wonder was thematically organized, so puppets in politics, puppets in religion. That was one way to go about it. We also looked at the idea of geographic or geographic/cultural. Questions of text, which again was very new to me. There's a tendency to want to write a lot of information because you have a lot of information. So you can go that direction. You can really minimize it and have virtually no wall text whatsoever. One of the things, both from this exhibit and also from a later one that I did in Cleveland, I realized the Smithsonian standards, where you're actually very limited both in terms of vocabulary and in terms of number of sentences per paragraph, with the idea that it opens up the ability for a visitor to experience that might not other have it, especially if English is a second language. It actually taught me to write in a very, very succinct manner. So that was actually a good experience because I realized I was saying the same things I wanted to say, just very, very simply. Obviously, interpretive approaches, what to emphasize, how to do it. One of the things that came up is the question of unknown and known artisans. We tend to write about specific puppet makers in the West because we have their names attached. When we are looking at a global collection where very often things have been collected without the names of artists being attached. It tends to kind of set up a value system unintentionally, but that has to be addressed. And then on top of this is the whole idea Atlanta is extremely humid. So that was a problem in the old museum. What do you need to do in order to meet proper conservation practices? The limitations of the spaces. Now with new construction, you have to deal with things like accessibility issues. And of course, the bottom line for everything is always budget and fundraising, which was way above my pay grade. I fortunately did not have to deal with it. But one of the things that came out of this was that in various combinations, we began talking to different design firms around the country. And I would be the one who got sent out. And one of the things that really clicked with me was one firm told me that they were working on a project which had to do with running shoes. And they were trying to kind of get a sense from the clients of what was the core of this collection, why would it be attractive to people, why would they want to come? And their answer was, but everyone loves running shoes. And I realized, yeah, I just sort of assume everyone loves puppetry, right? Everybody who's here on this conference loves puppetry. But the vast majority of people don't have that association. Why should they care? What brings them in? At the Center for Puppetry Arts, family groups, even though they do performances for all age groups, family groups are incredibly important. School groups. Also, Atlanta has an amazingly diverse demographic. And so how do you speak to that, including communities that might not be in the habit of going to museums very often? So we began doing a series of what I would consider experimental temporary exhibits. I mean, there always had been temporary exhibits, but I wasn't involved. And so as part of these, I would try to come up with some interactive elements that were kid-proofed. Discovered that kids can break piano wire in one day, which was a big shock. I always thought you could lift elephants with that. So these are just a couple of the things that we did during that time. With some interactives, actually those little faces worked pretty well as things that could actually be touched and interacted with. Unfortunately, COVID, when I tried to integrate some of that into the final museum, made that problematic. We had a shadow screen that was the kids could get behind and work it. Anybody could. Rod puppets. But everything changed when Jim Henson's family became involved. Again, because Jim had this long relationship with both Vince as a friend in the museum and the center. Suddenly we found that new design firms were very interested in working with us because suddenly this was a very visible project. And it began when we realized the scope of it, we began discussing the fact that we would have to actually expand the architectural space, build a new building. Also, we had always sort of been shooting for improved infrastructure, but this required actual Smithsonian guidelines, which are very, very specific in terms of atmosphere and everything else. So the temporary exhibits follow these, and we did a few of these. And it gave me a chance to kind of play around with some ideas and some more interactives. And I'm running a little late here, so I'm going to get through this fairly quickly. But the company we end up working with is a group called ThinkWell. They're now part of TAIT. They are based on the form that a lot of theme design companies are doing. They're very influenced by Disney Imagineering, which was the ad hoc group of artists, designers, screenplay writers, period style specialists that the Disney company would put together to work on the theme parks. And so a lot of people have kind of broken away from that and they're doing their own thing. And this means that you're dealing with these really interesting groups. And our folks were really knowledgeable about popular culture. And so we worked very closely with them. We had a separate firm in Atlanta that actually did the building itself. And so finally, out of these discussions, we began moving in two directions for the two halves of the World Puppetry Museum. Geographic and cultural for the global collection, which was something I felt very strongly. I wanted puppets from a region to be together, so I moved away from thematic. And then chronological, so that we could kind of look at Jim Henson's life and his career through projects. So these are some of the concept designs and final drawings that ThinkWell put together. So this is the global collection. That gives you an idea of the whole plan. They did everything from design fabric patterns and banners that could hang to cases. As we were acquiring new pieces, we found different ways to emphasize them. So it kind of gives you an idea. It was a very, very dense design process that went on for a very long time. I would say roughly from beginning to end of this project was about 10 years, certainly my part of it. And then we have the Jim Henson collection, which has a very different look to it. And this was much more involved the idea of environments. I was very fortunate back in 1991 to visit the Muppet Mansion about a year after Mr. Henson had died. And so the office was still the way it was in his lifetime. I was able to kind of look in the shops. And that was such a huge influence. I had a lot of photographs, actually, that they let me take. And so I had actually wanted to see environments for both halves, but it became very obvious that where really needed to be was in the Henson section, and budget-wise is what we could afford. And so these are some of the things that came out of that based on photographs that the Henson family and the Henson Company had provided us. And the whole idea was to kind of bring visitors through and really make them feel like they are experiencing this world very directly. So, and then we end in the area of fantasies, films, and Fraggle Rock. We had video throughout. That was very important to the family, that there always be, these puppets exist on film. And so we needed to have film everywhere. We had a lot of film and photographs in the Global as well. That was very important, but it was especially important in the Henson section. And then finally, this was really special. And this was, the Henson family was absolutely wonderful. I was working primarily with Cheryl Henson and Bonnie Erickson from the foundation, and Karen Falk, who was the archivist, and they could not have been kinder. And so very late in the process, Cheryl said, well, we've got this stained glass window. Do you think there would be a place for it? So in the end, this is the final image that visitors see as they leave the Henson section of this museum, along with a quote from Jim. And it's just sort of the perfect end note. I think that was Chris Dermick at Thinkwell who came up with that. But one of the people we really have to mention, Kelsey Fritz. There were several people I worked with: Jeremy Underwood, Melissa McCarger, Susan Kinney. Carrie McCarthy was our first project person. Later on was Carolyn Harris when Carrie had to move for another project. But Kelsey Fritz was really our master sergeant in terms of making things happen and doing everything. So she was extraordinary and really needs a shout out here. Let's see. So I did want to end with this quote from Nancy. The objective is to amass a collection of puppets which exemplifies myriad types, styles, and social functions of puppetry from every continent of the world. The ultimate goal is to demonstrate the universality of underlying the diversity of puppetry, and through it, humanity itself. And that is, that is Nancy as a person. That is Nancy as the founder of the museum. And for further information, these articles are excellent from the Puppetry Journal and from American Puppetry Collections, History and Performance. And Nancy speaks about the collection itself to a much greater degree than I can, and it's very, very much worth checking out. And thank you very much.
Just before this panel, I talked with Dacia. We met at the last time there like 8 years ago when I was pregnant with now 7 years old boy. I'll really hope I can get back there soon with Dacia maybe. Is Mascha? Oh yay! Yes. Sorry. So excited. Okay, Mascha, are you ready? I think.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm
Yeah,
ready.
good.
Finally.
Yeah. Yes.
So next image, please.
Hold on one second. Let's just get you on screen real quick. Let's get you can turn on your. There we go.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Very. Yeah. So next image, please. So one of the experiences we probably all share as puppet theater maniacs is a wonder of animation. A puppet or object, might even be an Alka-Seltzer, is getting alive by animation through a puppeteer. And although my brain knows that I'm only imagining the puppet or object alive, my heart feels something else. This wonder was the starting point for my personal fascination with puppet and object theater 30 years ago. Later, I also learned to admire the immense creativity of this visual theater art form and the artists involved. Next image, please. When I began working for the Puppet Theater collection in Munich City Museum in 2008, I quickly noticed that our permanent exposition about puppet theater didn't manage to create this fascination in most of our visitors. Next image, please. The exposition, with its closed showcases, tried to present the puppets in their scenery. Next image. It provided information about the history of puppet theater, but it didn't invoke imagination so much. And next image, please. While trying to fill this gap by inviting contemporary puppeteers with their shows in several festivals, as the Munich collection did almost from the year of its founding in 1940, the principal problem wasn't solved. Puppets without animation are just museum artifacts for almost everybody, although they're still a germ of their life felt by some visitors. Children, for example, crying and being scared by a puppet, or adults asking me if working in the collection is feeling spooky. So I will share some experience I made working in the Puppet Theater collection with the question, how to present puppets in museums, or how do we get these dead objects alive? Waiting for the general refurbishment of the museum to start, which now finally started in 2024, we, means the former director of the collection, Manfred Wegner, and me, tried several ways to work with our collection in temporary exposition. Next image, please. And the next. So first option, let puppeteers and artists do the job. The most successful, in my opinion, were expositions created by contemporary puppeteers and artists, with their puppets and sceneries, but also with our collection. I want to shortly mention these expositions curated, or better, accompanied by Manfred Wegner and me. Next image, please. 2009, we opened I'm in Orcus, a diary made of mud, with Francesca Bettini and Julia Molnar, both famous object theater artists in Europe. Inviting other artists to join them. So next image, please. So these are all the artists in the process. To join them, they created an installation. Next image, please. And this installation accompanied their show they were creating at the moment, Kasperl's Roots. Working with clay, light, and roots, they shook our conception of building expositions. Next image, please. As this is a lecture in honor of John Bell, I'm very happy to mention the exposition Peter and Elka Schumann, created 2011 in our museum. Next image, please. And it has long title, Konzentrationskapelle der ungläubigen Puppenspieler mit Wartezimmer für Nimmerleinstag, which means Concentration Chapel of the Unbelieving Puppeteers with a waiting room for when hell freezes over. Next image, please. With masks, puppets, and paintings, partly already created for the Word Exposition in Hanover in the year 2000, they tried to build a small copy of the Bread and Puppet Museum in Vermont. Next image, please. Hanging and piling puppets more as independent art installation, impressing by the amount of puppets and their individual expressions. These first expositions didn't involve objects from our collection. So next image, please. In the year 2013, we invited Senegalese-Belgian artist Pelagie Baguigui and German puppeteer, director and designer Stefanie Oberhoff to create an exposition starting with our collection of puppets from Africa. Next image, please. The exposition Asylum Stadtmuseum was a sharp critic of colonialism, playfully showing and hiding our objects, and also dealing with our practices of exhibiting and collecting in the museum. So there's 3 more images, I think. Perhaps you can show them. In 2018, the next image, please. The German puppeteer, puppet designer, and director Frank Söhnle created the exposition Cabinet of Wonder, really setting his puppets and puppets of our collection in dialogue and enchanting the visitors. This exposition even had its own soundtrack, and there are 3 images of it. So, all of these expositions found a special way to fight customary exposition strategies and animate the puppets, or find another way of letting them come alive. COVID pandemic changed our plans for the refurbishment of the museum, originally scheduled for starting in 2021. So I got the chance to create an exposition commenting, changing, and trying to animate our former permanent exposition of puppet theater you saw in the first images. So second idea, what if we, the museum team, curate expositions more artistically? Next image, please. The exposition Not a Doll's House, Traditional Rows and Brand New Images was created by 2 curators of a collection of contemporary art in Munich, Sammlung Götz, 1 curator of photo collection im Münchner Stadtmuseum, and me. Next image, please. By setting art by Natalie Djurberg, Kara Walker, William Kentridge, Laurie Simmons, and Walsh Hockey. Next image, please. Amongst many others in dialogue with puppets from our collection, by, for example, Maria Loiko, Lotte Pritzel, Lotte Reiniger, Richard Teschner, Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler, we managed to create a haunting show which opened up for topics as gender roles, racism, war and violence, and death. With a lot of videos, we tried to animate the space. Next image, please. While working on the exposition, we made the decision and got the permission to do it for this by some of the artists still alive, of really working freely and composing objects following the dramaturgy of the exposition. But naturally, by creating thematic chapters, the work and story of the single puppet and its creator and puppeteers was less present, hidden in the exposition booklet. By recomposing them, we gave them a new meaning, something that already occurred while working with artists and puppeteers, but now with us as curators. It was the museum itself somehow leaving the path of objective information. So, next slide, please. Till now, we have found help for our work in the artists creating puppet theater. But another way of thinking about presenting and curating can also be found by working with potential visitors. Everybody is loving running shoes. I know that Ballet Institute already has experiences here. I don't, so next image, please. I only have a concept in my drawer. And this is a concept for an exposition about puppet theater, especially for children. I hope that I will find partners and funding for creating this exposition together with children, already very early in the process. For this, I would like to work with the Children's Advisory Board. One important question for me is, which topic could be interesting for the children? Is it puppet theater as art form and animation? Or would they prefer working on a theme like fairy tales or heroes, for example, or children's rights? And puppets are only means for the bigger story of the expedition? Next slide, please. That leads me to my fourth option. What if puppets work as mediators? That leads me to the next concept, also connected with the structure I'm working in. Munich City Museum has several formerly independent collections: photography, music instruments, arts and crafts, graphic art, fashion. All of them are supposed and willing to join in expositions combining the collections via a bigger topic. from death and destruction to food, humor, and beauty. And you have to remember we are now closed, so we can rethink our way of working together. In these expositions, puppets will not be the main focus, but they can still show their special powers. Perhaps they will even sparkle more in this context. But also here, the history of puppet theater connected to it can only be one small aspect. The puppets are mediators for other stories and goals in this context, educating and helping perhaps to promote change, as Paulette already is doing. Next chapter, please, or next slide. Münchner Städtemuseum or Munich City Museum will open again in 2031. So a lot of time for work on our new concepts for small permanent and a bigger temporary expositions. Meanwhile, we are watching what the others are doing. And in Germany, there are, I just counted, but I'm not sure, like 7 bigger puppet theater museums, and 2 of them just reopened after refurbishment. And this is the Puppet Theater Museum in Lübeck, Kalk 17. Next slide, please. Which is theater and museum combined. And this is the exposition, but I didn't visit it yet. They are really trying to combine the exposition parts for a wide audience and also the interest of specialists. But I didn't see it yet, so I can't tell a lot about it. Just go to Lübeck if you can. And the second one is in Dresden. Next slide. And this is the Puppentheater-Sammlung, and is also in the same building with a theater with Theater Junge Generation. And this is a youth theater with a branch of puppet theater also. But they are not one structure, they are just next to each other. In Dresden, the concept is to combine a small permanent exposition with annual special expositions curated by artists that are not part of the puppet world, but having an interest in working with puppets. For the first exposition last year, it was German theater company Rimini Protocol. This year, it is the Studio for the Lesser Good Idea from South Africa, founded by William Kentridge. And this Studio for the Lesser Good Idea is creating an interdisciplinary intervention. I also didn't visit it yet, but I'm going in November and looking forward to this. While I'm a big fan of the temporary expositions, I'm not 100% convinced of the concept of the permanent one. It has wonderful objects and wonderful stages for animating puppets, but one key problem for me: visitors are invited to be custodians themselves. They can put on a white lab coat, as you can see on the image, and start research with a questionnaire. They can explore some of the puppets in the showcases, composed in 6 chapters telling about the history and different techniques of puppet theater. But I'm asking myself if this is really showing the wonder of puppet theater, this germ of animation of life. As a custodian myself, I know that this is sometimes a quite dry job, and very often I am missing the puppeteers here. So waiting for 2031 and our big reopening, you're all invited to come. I hope I finally find a way to get these dead objects alive. Next slide, please. This is how our permanent exposition perhaps will look like, but next slide, please. I hope I can change it because the former director Manfred, he was designing this, and I'm not quite convinced. Yeah, and next slide, please. I wanted to take the opportunity of thanking John for advice and inspiration. And this is a photo taken at the conference Deconstructing the Doll's House. This was in context of the expedition I did in Berlin. Also was not a doll's house. And John and Emily and everybody in Ballet Institute really gave me a lot of advice for preparing this conference. And the conference or this symposium representing a charity through puppetry and performing objects in 2021 was really inspiring me for doing this symposium. So thank you very, very much, John. Yeah, and next slide. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Mascha. I would reintroduce Claudia Orenstein. She's also, I think John didn't mention you about the Puppetry International, editor of Puppetry International Research. Yes. And then I'm also the exhibition review editor of the journal. So it's one and only of a scholarly journal that
Online. Let's say, I mean, there are,
so you can
but-
access anywhere at any time. Yes. So she's also, in that sense, she's my mentor, and then it's my role model. Also, we are very welcome exhibition, puppetry exhibition review anytime. I'll be your editor. I'll serve you as an editor. Okay, so.
well, thank you. But you are all my mentors because, as I said in the previous panel, that this is a whole new world for me, and this is really exciting. But of course, in some ways, it's anybody who's involved in puppetry, everybody's becoming, like if you come into my office, we're all becoming curators because we all have objects and we have to be thinking about preserving them or using them, if not also displaying them. These were really inspiring presentations, and they made me think about a lot of ideas. First of all, how important it is to have really good puppet exhibits that help to support the education of how interesting puppetry is and how broad and deep an art it is. And these wonderful exhibits are really expressing that. The importance of I mean, I guess part of the thing I'm curious about is the relationship of some of these ideas to, are puppetry exhibits galvanizing other kinds of things in museum world? Are they coming, or museum worlds also doing these kind of things? Because there's so much performativity in the puppets, and what I'm seeing everybody doing here is taking care not just of the objects, but of course you need to rethink the space. You need to think about the audience and their experience. So in some ways, it's trying to transform the museum space into the performative space, but as an exhibit. And so this is a kind of interesting new territory that you're all exploring, and really supporting that interactivity, which, is not, I hope you won't mind me saying, it's not gimmicky in this sense. It's, in some, I think, other kind of museums where there's like an interest in interactivity, it seems like added on. But here it's so essential and central to what puppets are and to how to enjoy, as you're saying, the liveness of them. If I could start with a question, one of the questions that kept coming back to me is, many of you are talking about how you came to doing this work, but weren't from the curatorial world or needed to rethink curatorial world. I mean, is there a training for curators, or can we imagine, is this a need that we have, and what would be required? Like, is this a new world to explore how to train either people in curatorial programs or already, or people who are in puppetry to do this kind of work? What would be needed? So I don't know if you mind if I just open that up as a question for whoever might want to jump in. You could just raise your hand and yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Well, I can certainly say in the United States, there's, their entire programs, undergraduate and graduate majors in museum curatorial studies. And so, for instance, Jeremy Underwood and then Kelsey Fritz both came from those kinds of programs as museum people who then found themselves in a puppet museum. But even actually one of our advisors, Mary Jo Arnaldi, was a Bowling Green student who ended up being a curator at the Smithsonian, and she's written the definitive book on the puppetry of Mali in English. So, came from she came from a research background, but then found herself in museum studies. So yeah, it definitely exists, but I don't, and I think someone who wanted to study that probably could go in and choose, puppetry as their main area of research, and it could work out just fine.
Does anyone else have any other thoughts on like what would be required to support curators wanting to sort of expand and open up to this world? Yes, Mascha.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so there are these kind of studies in Europe, Germany at least too. But I already told about the photo collection in our museum, and they really have a program for future photo curators. And these future photo curators, they work in 3 different really famous institutions of photography, and they stay there for half a year working there, and in the end they come out as photo curators. But I think for puppetry this wouldn't work because unfortunately I think there are not so many puppet curators really needed. There are not so many puppetry museums, but what some of the German museums did. So we have 4 of we now had some sort of grant too for one person researching and trying. Actually, this was not about curating, but about citizen science in puppetry museums. But also this person was coming to all the 4 of the museums and giving input, but also getting input on for her research. And this was really interesting. So I think some sort of networking and really working with different museums is inspiring for every institution, but can also be inspiring for new creators to come.
Thank you. The other question I had, I think I saw interesting examples as you were showing it, certainly the videos that are being included, but I'm wondering if there's other ways or if it's important for you to be thinking about somehow the presenting the stories that the puppets are involved with, as well as the objects in a dynamic way, and what other kinds of choices, if there's not a videos available, maybe you've made in doing that. Again, anybody who wants to jump in has a thought. Okay, Brad.
I know one of the things that I felt was very important was to have groups of characters whenever possible. That gives you an excuse to sort of show them in some kind of context. And context, I think, I agree, is incredibly important. For me, video has been the best way to do that, although then special events where you actually have live performances obviously are ideal. But we, at least in the current museum, we tried as much as possible to always connect it to storylines so that you see both sides of it.
Anybody else? Yes, Mascha.
There are also these ways of really like having some sort of little motor and animating the puppets. And I'm not a big fan of puppets like on all the time, but in this exposition Frank Söhnle did, they were like kind of turning, and he really got this some sort of, as it is string marionettes, they were really had their own movement. And this is also, I think, a wonderful way for at some points to really have to try to animate the puppets in the exposition.
Camille, I was really impressed with the first museum example that you showed. It actually reminded me so much of the Bread and Puppet Museum, and the kind of abundance of puppetry, which really has an impact. Do you want to say a little bit more maybe about how they came to that idea, you know, as opposed to sort of showing things in their own like scene or whatever, but showing this kind of abundance of imagery?
Do you mean the Białystok Puppet Theater, yeah, gallery?
Yeah, the first one that you showed.
Yeah. So, you know, the idea was to show them in mass, you know, just because that was the moment when, you know, scholars in Poland thought about puppets as not maybe an object of art, but the objects which were used in theaters, which were which were simply objects to animate. So how to present animation? Maybe, you know, give as many puppets as possible, you know, create the space which is the base for your imaginary, for your own way of, you know, mental animation, let's say. So you've got the object and you start your own animation, your own mental animation. Because when you see, for example, only 3 puppets on the wall, you know, hanging on the wall or whatever, you know, and when you see 35 of them just gathered, you know, together, you know, there's a completely different effect. Completely different effect for your, you know, mind, for your, you know, the way you perceiving them. So that was the idea of this puppet cellar, as we call it in, you know, Białystok, this permanent exhibition in the Białystok Puppet Theater.
Thank you. So we have time for questions. We have a lot of curators here also who maybe have interesting things. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah. A year or so ago, I was over in Palermo at the Museo Antonio Pasqualino, which is a fabulous collection of the Sicilian opera figures. Not a lot of interactivity, but every day at around 5 o'clock, Salvatore Bombello and his family put on a show. And when I was there, the audience was full and very interested. And this was, I mean, this really did bring the puppets to life completely within the normal context of that tradition. So I wonder if there are performances as part of the exhibits in your institutions.
Yes.
Your mic.
Is someone, I'm sorry, is someone else going?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the center has the advantage of being, but which a lot of, I think is very often the case, is that it's both a museum and a performing arts institute. So very typically audiences come and, you know, especially school groups and family groups come, they see a performance, they go through the museum. One of the reasons that the Henson family chose the center, because there's also a huge collection on Long Island at the Museum of the Moving Image. But one of the reasons they chose to give a little bit, you know, the other half of it to us is because they wanted it to be a living puppet center where people learned how to make puppets, learned how to perform puppets, and could see performances. Not quite the same as actually, for instance, doing a live Muppet performance, but you know, an experience. And the center has brought in traditional groups on tour. So they're actually able to do performances of the kinds of traditional puppets, which are the strength of the collection, that you can actually see in the museum.
We have some questions coming in from online.
I would love to ask the panelists about techniques for displaying in an animating way puppets that may be damaged by age and can no longer be used for performance. How can performing objects find a second life?
Anybody want to jump in on that? Okay, Brad.
Sorry. Well, a lot of the, because the Muppets were made out of foam, a lot of the foam over time dissolves. It's a real problem. And so we actually had 2 restorators, Vito and Russ, Russ specialized in the fantasy figures and Vito specialized in the traditional Muppets. And they were trained by the Hensons and just restored. And so they've been they now have archival materials on the inside. Instead of foam, they would have like archival cotton. So that's part of it. The other thing is to actually create replicas. And then the replicas themselves can actually be handled by visitors or can be performed.
Any other thoughts from other panelists on
The chat.
Yes, Mascha.
The chat there is so Mascha. museum.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we also have to be honest. If a puppet, as Kamil said, it if a puppet is coming to a museum, it's some sort of death of its first life, and then there's a second life, hopefully beginning. In our museum, the puppeteers come and visit us, and they ask us, can I not take this puppet? And it's so cruel. Can we reanimate? But if we animate it, it will die even faster. It will be destroyed. So I think in museum our job is to conserve and find ways to do animating expositions.
There's one question I see in the chat, just the idea of creating a world is very clear. No, sorry, this is this. Oh yeah. Do the installations also feature live performance in both examples? I mean, both exhibitions in Białystok and in Warsaw. There were no direct involvement of public. I mean, there were some events which were additional to the exhibition, but in Białystok mainly this contemporary exhibition of puppets is devoted to children. So children coming to theater, and they are just going through the exhibition and just well, concentrate on what they are simply see, And in Warsaw, this exhibition in Warsaw was an exhibition mainly for adults. So there were some special performances as a kind of extra events, some special events, let's say close to the exhibition.
Other questions?
Yeah, it occurs to me that through these curations, as well as the work of Ballard Institute, Emily, and with John, there is a kind of standard best practice being created here. Is there any interest in publishing or codifying that for future curators who want to exhibit puppets well?
Were you all able to hear the question? Should I repeat it? So the question is that in the Ballard and in these other institutions, that there's a developing best practices model of how to exhibit puppets, and she's asking whether there's any interest in publishing that or codifying it in some way, these sort of best practices so they get better known.
Next issue of Puppetry International Research.
Happy to do an issue on PIR, the research with this material in it if somebody wants to write it up, because I think it's a useful.
We'll welcome a submission from
Yeah.
all the museum around the world.
Maybe the exhibition review editor should do a special section on curators rather than on reviews from the outside.
Well,
Other questions online or in the house?
oh, so we also have comments from Frank here about I'd like to signal the vision of Nancy Lobstad, who came to Smithsonian in 1977 with the idea of bringing puppetry into the National Museum, and the perspective of Ralph Rinzler, who welcomed her proposal to fully involve Smithsonian in the 1980 UNIMA World Congress in Washington, D.C. I mean, that was a very important, instrumental event in the U.S. that brought puppetry into the main attention before 2011 conference at the Ballard. I think we are I think we might, can we save the chat?
Yeah, the chat will be recorded.
Yes, chat will be recorded, and then I hope we have more opportunity to discuss all the questions arise here, and then in our next session. So we are having lunch break, but before we going into lunch break, I want to
First, can we just thank our.
Sorry, I was
Thank you.
sorry. Thank you very much, Brad. I wish we will meet somewhere, maybe in 2031 in Munich together, or all of us, or in Atlanta sometime. Yes, thank you very much, Kamil and Brad and Mascha. So we are gonna at the Ballard, and then we kind of talk a lot is about John as a Ballard director, but also John has been still serving for the MFA Puppet Arts program here in UConn as an educator and an inspiration for many students. So UConn MFA or Puppet Arts program is one and only in the whole country, a degree giving program on puppetry. And then we have a special exhibition here at the Ballard celebrating its 60 years. And then Bart was here, who's been leading the program for last, I believe, like 3 decades. Yeah, and then here. And then also the UConn Puppet Arts program is also part of dramatic arts department here. And then the dramatic arts has its production arm or Connecticut Repertory Theater. So being together, Connecticut Repertory Theater also features great puppetry produced by the students of MFA and the students of the, so it's a very, very special place. And then today, after we finish at 8 o'clock, there's a show of Living Dead in Denmark, written by Qui Nugent. It's like a zombie meets puppet Shakespeare. It's like a sequel to Hamlet. So I haven't seen it yet because I'm saving it for after this. I'm seeing tomorrow. But for the and then also it features the puppets made by one of our MFA students, Ali, who's talented puppet maker and performer from Iran. So for those of you who want to attend the event, the show is the CRT is right across the road from here, and then CRT is offering 20% discount with the code Zombie25. So so you can go online and then purchase the ticket, and then like there isn't much else to do at night around here. So what's the best? It's very seasonal, like zombie Halloween is coming. So okay, now we are breaking for lunch, and then thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much everyone online.